Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Huge development today coming out of Mercedes after their early season struggles. They are reshuffling their entire technical department. James Allison, who joined the team in 2017 and helped mastermind, among others, the fastest Formula 1 car of all time, the W11, is returning to the team as technical director. Mike Elliott is moving on from the role, slightly upwards actually from a managerial perspective, but Toto Wolff says that he made the call that he's not best suited for this situation right now, and James Allison, Mercedes believe, is the man to take the team back to the top. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. So first of all, just wanted to mention you guys might have seen some fake accounts going around. There was this tweet today from a fake Chris Medland. We know all the kind of Twitter verification drama that's currently going on, who says Sergio Perez is departing Red Bull. The real Chris Medland says that's not happening, but there's going to be more of this coming on. And honestly, when I saw this tweet from Autosport, I thought, hang on a second, is this actually not even true? And then I checked Autosport's actual account, and this is their legitimate account despite no longer having the verification checkmark. But whatever, maybe they'll get it back down the line. They can pay money to do it, but the question is, do they want to? It's more for organizations than it is for individuals. But as they say, breaking, James Allison and Mike Elliott will swap jobs as part of a reshuffle of the senior technical team at Mercedes. Seems to me that after Bahrain, they thought, yeah, this isn't going to plan. We've got to make some serious changes. Toto Wolff was on the phone to James Allison, saying, please come back from the America's Cup, stop building boats and come back again, right? And that James Allison is a figure, he's, almost newy in a sense, the fact that he went over to build boats, and he has some leverage on Mercedes. He's been around a while, he's built many championship winning cars from Ferrari into Mercedes over the last few years. In April 2021, he kind of took a different role in the team, still somewhat involved in the F1 project, but mainly using his focus elsewhere, and fundamentally, he enjoys what he's doing over in boats, I imagine, and he would have had to have been convinced very nicely indeed to return to the Formula 1 team because he kind of calls the shots. They need him more than he needs them, you could argue. And I imagine Toto Wolff had to be very convincing on the phone to make this happen. But the funny thing is, just a week and a half ago or so, there were rumours that Allison was going to come back, and we talked about it after they did their post-race debrief in Australia. We said, interesting, James Allison doing the post-race debrief. Mike Elliott did one of the ones before. We're like, okay, maybe there's something happening here. Certainly it was some speculation at the time. And it was only a week or so ago where Toto Wolff said, no, that's not the case. He plays an active role in the long-term strategies, but nowadays he devotes his time to other activities. So it's interesting the game that's being played here, because apparently James Allison has returned on a more full-time capacity around about 3-4 weeks ago now, even though a week ago Toto Wolff said it's not the case and he's devoting his time elsewhere. So it's pretty interesting. He might have actually said that back at the Australian Grand Prix, so not exactly sure how the timings line up, but maybe some white lies going on here from Toto Wolff to maintain the PR narrative, because Mercedes apparently told Automotor and Sport this swap came into effect a few weeks ago, and now this is what's happening going forward. So just to explain the situation from the ground up, this off-season for Mercedes wasn't particularly good. After Bahrain, they made the call to make a change. James Allison is going to come back. Some of the parts in the wind hull that were used in the winter break were inaccurate and produced outside of the permitted tolerances. These problems have not only affected the development of the W14, and I believe made them more convinced in the zero pod design than they should have otherwise been, but also in terms of correlation from the simulator to real life. This also led to the dismissal of some people who follow the productions. This we talked about a few weeks ago now, where certain members of the engineering department were fired effectively for making a major cock-up, it's got to be said. Now, this isn't necessarily Mike Elliott's fault, but it is certainly under his domain, and therefore there were some questions about whether Mike Elliott would remain in that role as the technical director for Mercedes, given that he took up the role a couple of years ago now, April 2021, and has overseen the W13 and the W14. So not exactly the best tenure given Mercedes' pedigree over the last decades. And as they say, the development of the W14 has been ramped up in recent weeks. So this is the explanation from Toto Wolff, is exactly what's happened here. But I'm sure this will be good news to many Mercedes fans, with James Allison returning in a more full-time capacity. So this was the explanation. This is very much driven by Mike Elliott owning the process. So we have reversed the roles. So Mike Elliott has actually kind of been promoted here in a way. He is now the Chief Technical Officer. That's obviously a C-suite executive level position. Now, okay, he's going to have a slightly wider reach now in what he does than what he was doing before. He has a brilliant switched on scientific minds, and James Allison has returned to his technical director position, reporting into Mike. So it's kind of funny in a way that Allison is really the guy now calling the shots in terms of how they develop the car, but Mike Elliott actually has a more senior role technically, but for car development is obviously a slightly different story. Mike's assessment was, and the introspection is really admirable, is that with James we have a gladiator on the field and the troops are going to go through the fire for him and with him, which is quite interesting to say that Mike Elliott felt like he wasn't able to lead the engineers and inspire the same kind of a fire, I suppose, in the engineers as James Allison was, maybe because of the tenure of Allison and what he'd done in the past and his relationship with those guys. Maybe Mike Elliott just isn't quite the character to be able to execute on that. These are the two men in question here, Mike Elliott on the left, James Allison on the right. I'm sure you've seen both of them from time to time, but yeah, Mike Elliott, I guess, thought either he's the wrong man for the job because he doesn't, his skill set isn't working great for actually developing the car, but also maybe it's a more personal level thing where Mike Elliott didn't feel like he was the right guy to actually get the best out of these engineers. And of course we saw during the development period there were mistakes made and firings made, and that happened under Elliott's watch, you could say. So yeah, he decided, or maybe it was a mutual decision, and they're saying that Elliott decided that he's going to be departing from that particular role and moving elsewhere. Mike came to the conclusion, and the way that he approaches things, his skill set is best utilized in developing the organization going forwards, from technical capabilities to human capabilities, and putting together a structure that can be successful for many years to come. Goes on to talk about artificial intelligence and changes in technical developments. Quite an interesting comment actually from Toto Wolff, because we know the rise of ChatGPT and stuff. Like, I wonder if you asked it to develop a Formula 1 car for the ground effect era, whether it would be better than the Williams. But the development of AI is definitely something that these teams are going to have to keep in mind in terms of how they actually develop cars going forward. And maybe Mike, as he says here, Toto Wolff sees himself in a sweet spot here. Obviously, he's a super capable engineer, very credible and respected. He's going to be a coach and sparring partner for the most senior people. Mike took this decision by himself, and with both him and James coming to this conclusion, we are having both of them in their respective genius positions. They've also made some changes though, with chief designer John Owen, who's now only going to focus on car design, whereas Giacomo Totoro will become the engineering director, who will focus on the design office and organizational development. He goes on to explain that nowadays, under the cost cap, the role of the kind of a director of design, let's just say, is split between designing the car and dealing with the cost cap. So now they're splitting that to a certain extent, so John can focus on the specifics of the car design, and then Giacomo can figure everything else out. But Allison's return is very interesting to see, because it was only a couple of weeks ago we heard that it wasn't really going to happen. He went in 2021 to develop boats for the Ineos America's Cup team. We can see his history at Mercedes here. In 2017 he joins, obviously developed many championship winning cars over the years to follow, including the W11 and the W12. He then kind of dipped out of there from his technical director role, became the CTO in April 2021, and focused more of his attention elsewhere, but now he's swapping that around again. So it must have been some good convincing from Toto Wolff, and clearly James Allison realised they probably need him back if they want to get to where they once were. And yeah, for whatever reason, it wasn't working out with Mike Elliott in charge. Toto Wolff obviously made the call a couple of years ago to switch these things around, or at least it allows that to happen. Hasn't worked out for Mercedes, it's got to be said, over the last couple of years with the cars they have produced. And yes, is James Allison's return going to switch Mercedes on to be a championship winner this year? Probably not, but next year it would be expected they'll move in a much superior direction. And obviously he has been overseeing, apparently for the last few weeks now, the upgrades they're bringing to the W14. And okay, whether in the ground effect era it's going to be different, whether he's quite an Adrian Newey figure, that's of course a debate that can be had, but it's quite a significant change in Mercedes, one that people have been wanting to see for some time. Allison returning in a more full-time aspect, and what that is going to be the case going forward. It's going to see more of him at races, and what that means for the budget cap and everything, whether they've had to fork out a big amount of money just to pay this guy to actually get him to come back, I don't know, but it is probably money well spent, all things considered. A couple of other things to mention before we close out the video. Firstly, on Carlos Sainz, rumours emerging over the last few days that Audi are going to be interested in Carlos Sainz. Now, this might make sense just because Sainz, so Carlos Sainz Jr. is what it is, right? His father is a rally driver who I believe races either for Audi or for an Audi affiliated team. So there have been some rumours that when Audi come in with Sauber, that they are going to want Carlos Sainz in 2026. Now, this is just a very far out there rumour, of course, and I was going to mention it today anyway. And Carlos Sainz actually was asked to comment on this and says the following: "I'm surprised how many people make things up. My goal is to be at Ferrari for many years. I'm comfortable here and living the dream. On the one hand, it makes me laugh, and on the other, it pisses me off how invented rumours." So he's basically basically saying stop inventing, come without corroboration, nobody will ever go to the journalist and ask why he wrote a lie. So interesting point there. But I mean, still, as he says, I want to be with Ferrari for many more years, which, okay, fair enough, but maybe many more years is what, 2 or 3 more years before 2026 and he joins Audi. It might make sense, and I don't really expect Sainz and Leclerc to be at Ferrari both for more than 3 more years, to be honest, right? So I think this actually makes a fair bit of sense. And obviously the drivers are good PR trained anyway. So I guess we'll stay tuned. But in a few years' time, if Sainz is at Audi, it might be another one of those cases of teams, drivers denying things, and it turns out to be true. But I wouldn't be surprised if, as it stands, there has really been no discussion to that extent. The other thing that Formula One are supposedly doing is fixing the calendar. George Russell has said, look, you guys have got to get rid of these stupid kind of double headers. Like, we're going Vegas to Abu Dhabi. We're going Baku to Miami. Like, it's all over the place, this Canada. And for some reason, Canada, I think it's based on like the timing of a holiday or something, but the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal just happens in the middle of the European season. We go to Canada and then go back again. Like, that really should be bolted onto some of the US kind of a Grand Prix in Mexico and Brazil and all this towards the end of the year, I would say, but it's not how it is. So they are apparently taking steps to divide the 2024 Canada into races in the same region to improve sustainability and reduce emissions. Now, they can say they're doing this. I will believe it when I see it, to be perfectly honest, but there has been some discussions that they're going to try and get rid of the whole Baku-Miami thing, the Vegas-Abu Dhabi thing, and maybe that means that, because Abu Dhabi is always going to be the season finale, they pay too much money for that not to be the case. Vegas might end up moving earlier in the year, I wouldn't be surprised, and I think if they can fix that Canadian Grand Prix problem, then they might be in a better position. But it's definitely an interesting one, and tweet your thoughts on this in the comment section below. They've also said, Liberty Media, the owners of Formula One themselves, that it is putting an additional strain on the staff having this many Grand Prix. We have a Canada, some of which for historical reasons has got to 24 races. It does drain people and there's a lot of travel, and there's been the argument that if they really extend it more than 24, like drivers and teams are going to say we simply cannot cope with this, and I wouldn't blame them for that at all. But they might keep trying to push past, and I know that people have suggested in the next decade we might go, what, 25, 26, 28, who knows. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.